Your Serene Highness, Prince Albert, almost a Portuguese honorary citizen. You know how much we really love you. And we know how you do know Portugal for so long. Merci bien de votre présence toujours ici. Vous êtes chez vous. Vous le savez. Depuis toujours. Senhor Presidente da Câmara de Cascais, Mr. Mayor of Cascais, congratulations. Cascais has been an example of fight for this subject. Not just on the field of research, but in preparing, organizing initiatives like this one, which is a very, very important one. Not just for Cascais or for Portugal, but for the whole scientific community, Mediterranean and also Atlantic community and global community. Monsieur le Directeur Général, thank you for a very impressive statement. And Your Excellencies, dear friends, be also at home in Portugal. It is for me a great privilege to tell you a little bit about the legacy that His Serene Highness Prince Albert has already recalled in a way. Because it's the history of the relation that for a century have been forged between Portugal and Monaco concerning the science and conservation of the oceans. Facing the Bay of Cascais, I guess you've been there. If not yet, you'll be there today, tomorrow, one of these days. There stands the statue of King Carlos of Bragança, a pioneer of Portuguese oceanography. The statue shows him aboard the ship, the yacht Amelia, in which he sailed the seas in search of new species to enrich his prized collection that was admired all over the world. The fact that this statue is neighboring the Citadel Palace, where you're staying, it's your home in Portugal. It's of enormous symbolism, as Cascais owes much to King Carlos. At the time, King Carlos was known as a learned prince, and his passion for the seas is really remarkable. With his researches starting in September 1896 aboard the first yacht, Amelia, he undertook some 11 expeditions to explore underwater fauna, especially between Cap de Roque and Cap Spichel. Not long afterwards, with ships now equipped with laboratories, he ventured along the Alentejo and Algarve coasts in the south of continental Portugal. And between 1997 and 1904, he published several monographs and booklets in Portuguese and in French, containing the results of his investigations, as well as more voluminous works, such as one dedicated to the fisheries in Algarve, describing another one of them, sharks caught along the Portuguese coasts between 1896 and 1903. King Carlos regularly sent letters reporting his researches to Prince Albert I of Monaco, accompanied by maps, and the Monegasque prince visited him in 1894. It is even said that it was Albert I who aroused the interest of the young Portuguese prince, who was still very young by then, in oceanography, an intellectual interest that led him to exhibit his collection on several occasions in Lisbon, in Oporto, but also in the 1906 Milan International Exhibition. As we can see, there was not only an interest on the part of the two sovereigns in researching and producing science, but also, and that's a key point, the desire of disseminate and make it known to all their citizens. Let me remind you, moreover, that King Carlos was also an environmentalist, avant la lettre, and that he was to relate in a letter to Prince Albert. He even leapt into the sea with the help of 4 of his sailors to rescue a dwarf sperm whale trapped in the waters of the Bay of Cascais. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's for me a pleasure to address you at a meeting organized by one of the oldest institutions in the world dedicated to the study of the seas, and particularly of the Mediterranean. It's an honor that you can celebrate 100 years of your life here in Cascais. Because, in a way, Portugal started not to accept that we were also Mediterranean, thinking mostly of the Atlantic Ocean, and we decided to accept it too late in 2004, joining your commission. It was late, but better late than not joining at all. One of the 3 axes of our fight, today's fight, we were there in New York. And we can say that this year, the General Assembly of the United Nations was really remarkable on account of the Climate Change Summit. The rest of it was important, but not as important as that summit. Because for the first time, leaders from all continents, crossing all oceans, showed they were understanding how important it was to act, not to reason, not just to research, not just to discuss, but to act. We are running out of time. And the 3 axes I would like to point out, forgetting my written speech, of course. The first one is this. I'm a professor. I'm a university professor. So I do understand how important it is to be a researcher and a scientist. But it's not enough to have your studies if they are not well known all over the world. First X is the partnership with economic actors. They must understand, and they are starting to understand, how important it is for their activities to develop the partnership with the scientific community. In the beginning, there was a kind of suspicion, mutual suspicion. The scientists, we dislike a little bit the sponsors until we understand how important they are. And the sponsors look at the scientists as suspicious people. They create problems. People were used not to accept those problems. They didn't exist. They existed in the works of the scientists, but they were not perceived and understood by the community as a whole. And the companies started understanding that social responsibility, that sustainability required working with the scientific community. Not a part of it, not ignoring it. Because the reality is what it is. No use of trying to say it doesn't exist. The second X is civil society. You must win the souls of the common citizen, which is easier in younger continents. it's much more difficult in continents like Europe that are aging very, very quickly, at least a part of it. It's tough to make people understand at the age of 60, 70, 80, 90 that the world has changed. And they must really live with this priority and fight for it the same way the youngsters do, without having an age cleavage. That's so important. Otherwise, you'll have societies with a difference between generations that is a mentality cleavage. And then, most important and more difficult, political actors. We must win the will of the global powers for this fight. The world is changing. We've had, those like me, already very old, we have lived with a bipolar world with two superpowers. It's a long, long way. It seems it was yesterday, but it was not yesterday. That with just one superpower. And now we are converting it to a multipolar world. There we have the same superpower, but others arising. And at least one that used to be a global power converting into a regional power, fighting to enlarge its regional space. But emergent powers are really having a kind of a long-term fight for the future economic center of the world. Will it be in Asia, as it used to be before the Industrial Revolution? Will it go on being in Western countries, as it is for 200 years? And I speak of Asias, because there are different Asias. I mean, China, but also India, but also Japan, but also, who knows, Korea. I mean, and we need to make these powers understand how vital it is for them and for us and for the whole world this priority, interconnected priority, because global warming and climate change is interconnected with the oceans that are a stabilizing factor in solving that problem that is becoming a drama before becoming a tragedy. And we need to win those souls. It's not possible to have one part of humanity fighting for it, and then leading countries, leading political actors, postponing for internal reasons, for electoral reasons, for tactical reasons, for temporary reasons, action. Common action with the scientific community, with the economic actors, with the social actors, with the civil societies. That's why the summit was so important. That's why the conference next year in Lisbon will be so important. Not just because it is a UN conference, not just because of the subject, not just because it is in Lisbon. And you saw how I avoided to recall our history. You know it. If you don't know it, you'll learn it by heart very quickly. For us, ocean is our way of living. We used to say, one of our most well-known writers, not Francois, another one, Virgílio Freire, that from my mother tongue, we see the ocean. I mean, the Portuguese itself is something that comes from this maritime connection we have. And in Cascais, very special connection. I'm an example of it. You don't know, but I swim almost every day in the ocean, even in wintertime. And it's not Monaco. It's not Monaco. I mean, even with the global warming, Cascais is not Monaco. So, to tell you, this conference next year is important as a means of persuasion, political persuasion, because we cannot miss this opportunity. We have the attention of the world, but you know how things change. And if we do not convert this conjunctural priority into a structural priority with action, with detailed action, then people will start forgetting. Other priorities will appear: geopolitical, economic, social. And when we speak, and you speak of the Mediterranean, even what is really very much at stake, socially speaking, in the Mediterranean, has to do with this priority: migrations. Migrations. The geopolitical framework has to do with this priority. They are not different issues. They are just the same issue. Well, be welcome to Portugal. Feel at home. Don't forget, as Secretary-General António Guterres says almost every day, it's the battle of our lives. The battle of our lives. And of our generation, of this time. And I hope you'll be back next June for the conference. Thank you very much for your presence here in Portugal. And feel as if you were Portuguese the same way His Serene Highness is feeling for 40 or 50 years. Thank you.